So, hey, yeah. So let's go from Homestuck to that other thing that we were talking about to associate with real life people because that's just what we do. It's time for talking about Green Lantern things again, just like I did last
Huzzah.
episode. Except this episode, we're getting more in depth with the actual mechanics of the stuff. Which, I mean, I know that you're vaguely familiar with the mechanics of the stuff, Austin.
I'll be honest, the first thing I ever learned about Green Lantern
Mm-hmm.
was how the entire series rebooted itself to make an apology to the fans for a terrible arc that wasn't actually terrible, but everyone thought was terrible. So they ended up redefining everything, and from there, I know a little bit about the individual Lantern Corps.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, as you were saying.
So hey, yeah, to recap everybody, Green Lantern is a DC Comics superhero. You might recognize him from the fact that he appears in most large DC Comics things. He got a movie. It wasn't a good movie, but it was a movie. And
That
he
is
also appeared in the
certainly
Justice
a
League
yes.
cartoon and most other Justice League related things. He's kind of one of the big deals. And yeah, so his thing is that he has a green ring, and he uses it to basically do whatever the heck he wants to do, thanks to his willpower. Because, yeah, it's powered by his willpower. That's its thing. Oh, hey, I can make a bet. I'm going to do that real quick. And, yeah, so he has a ring, and it's the ultimate weapon in the universe, and he can use it to create anything that he thinks of, which is typically just a big thing to hit stuff with, or a laser beam,
I,
or maybe
I
a
love
force
the
bubble.
idea that, as I recall, Green Lantern's whole shtick is that he's got incredible power, but a terrible imagination.
The original one, yeah, pretty much. There are a variety of Green Lanterns because that's the thing. There isn't just one Green Lantern. There's an entire group of these guys, and some of them are more capable than others. But yeah, the original Green Lantern was not especially creative. But there have been other ones that have been more creative over time, like Kyle Rayner, who is actually a graphic artist. I wonder why. But yeah, so
Yeah.
basically, the only thing that limits a Green Lantern's capabilities is their willpower and their creativity. And the original Green Lantern that we met up with, Hal Jordan, has a ton of willpower, not a ton of creativity, but a ton of willpower. So he can create basically anything that he wanted to. He creates energy constructs, and they can be anything. Could be a fist, could be a laser beam, could be a giant hammer, could be a gigantic flaming napalm hamster, just whatever. But there aren't just green lanterns. There's a lantern for every color on the light spectrum. Red, orange, blue, or green, yellow, indigo, and violet. And all the different colors are powered by different emotions. So the thing is that green is sort of the most neutral emotion. It is statistically the weakest, but it's also the most controlled. But the further you get from green, the more powerful but the less controlled the power becomes. So yellow and blue are a little bit further from green, and they're a little bit more powerful, but they're also a little bit less controllable. So yellow uses fear, and blue uses hope. And the thing about those is that they're less about the user having that emotion, and more about inspiring that emotion in others. So a yellow lantern is powered by inspiring fear in others. Like imagine just, the whole good cop, bad cop thing. They're all bad cop. All of them are bad cop. Because, they get powered by making everybody afraid of them. And then all the blue lanterns are all good cop, basically. And then a little bit further from those are orange and indigo. And orange is greed, and indigo is compassion. And the thing about those rings is that they force their users to feel their associated motion at all times. It basically brainwashes them. And so for Orange, there's only one Orange Lantern, and that's Larfleeze. And he's pretty great. He's a pretty great character, used to comedic effect very effectively, and also tragic effect very effectively, because the Orange Lantern literally controls his life. He can experience nothing but greed for basically always. But because he is the only Orange Lantern, that does make him incredibly powerful. Because all these powers, all these lights have a singular light source that every lantern tends to devolve their power from. So having only one lantern using a single power source at any given time makes them really powerful. But diluting the power source among many lanterns makes them less powerful than they potentially could be. So, and then the Indigo Lanterns are kind of similar. The Indigo Lanterns actually, usually the Lanterns go to people who have a lot of the emotion, but the Indigo Lanterns go to people who show no compassion whatsoever. And so it forces compassion on them, basically turning villains into heroes, sort of heroes. They're not always that heroic, but they're certainly better than whenever they were sociopaths, that's for sure. You know what I mean?
Is that why the Klingon dude gets the Indigo? That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. Proceed, as you were.
So, the thing about the Indigo Lanterns is that they sort of have a copy ability, because compassion involves lots of empathy and such. They can actually use any of the lantern powers so long as another lantern is around them. So they can use the Blue Light of Hope's power if a blue lantern is nearby, or they can use the Orange Lantern's power if he's nearby. Because, hey, compassion, you feel the emotions of others. And, but the thing is that they all sort of have a hive mind thing, because they're all always feeling compassion all the time. So they're always feeling all of each other's emotions. They no longer have identities of their own, essentially. It's kind of terrifying, actually. And then that brings us to the most extreme emotions. The Red Lanterns of Rage, and the Violet Lanterns, or the Star Sapphires, who use love. And, whenever they first get their rings, they are entirely consumed by their emotion. So, Red Lanterns, whenever they start off, they're going around murdering everybody in a ridiculous rage. And, whenever the Star Sapphires first get their rings, they tend to go, a little bit nuts with love. For better or worse. Sometimes this can be a good thing. Sometimes this can be a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what were you about to say?
The name Star Sapphire bothers me so much, because in my semi-dyslexic mind, every time I hear Star Sapphire, all I can hear is Starfire.
Well, originally the Star Sapphire wasn't a group; it was a singular character that acted as a villain. That acted as a Green Lantern villain. Kind of a similar thing happened with the Yellow Lanterns, in that originally there was just one. He was Sinestro, and he was sort of like the arch nemesis of the Green Lantern. But, originally there was a single Star Sapphire, and she was Hal Jordan's, the Green Lantern's, girlfriend, who kind of went crazy in regards to that. And I don't actually know any of the actual stories, but she got better. Which is a thing that Red Lanterns can also do. They get better if they're dipped into like this magical blood pool or something. It makes it so that they can actually think and use their brain. But the thing is that they can't actually form constructs, because normally all the other lanterns, they can form some sort of construct with their ring, but the Red Lanterns, they can only recreate energy blasts with their rings. Because, I guess they just can't think hard enough to use their creativity, you know what I mean?
It could also just be the idea that rage you said, right? Is this
Mm-hmm.
idea of like it is an area of effect damage. So by making the attack or weapon an area of effect damage, that kind of balances out, evens out,
Yeah.
normalizes, whatever the word is for it. Matches. There we go. Ah,
Mm-hmm.
such a complex word.
Oh man. But yeah, so they do sort of compensate for not being able to create constructs by having some of the greatest raw power of any lantern ring possible. Because the thing is that the Red Lantern Ring actually replaces all of their blood and starts acting as their heart, like their literal heart, and it replaces it with this red energy napalm blood stuff that they spit out on their enemies, and it burns things and it melts things, and those things include other lantern constructs. So they can basically break just about any lantern construct by just spitting on it, essentially. Like, this stuff is super corrosive. And, yeah, so they're pretty dangerous. Oh, man, and speaking of dangerous, it's a creeper. Those are pretty dangerous. That did a lot of damage, but I'm okay.
Where did the idea come from for the creepers?
They're, Notch tried to create a model for a pig and failed horribly.
I feel like I heard this story once, but that's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad I have a terrible memory, because it's like hearing that again for the first time.
Yeah, so going back to lantern stuff. So that's all the main lanterns. There's like a few others, but they're like not relevant. At least not to this discussion. But speaking of which, let's get to the actual discussion part of the discussion. Because, much like Homestuck and thinking, hey, what class and aspect would you have? Thinking, hey, what lantern ring would you have? Is often a very fandom thing to do. And, I mean, given what class and aspect I discussed earlier that I think that I would have, I bet you can guess which lantern ring I'd have. It's the blue one. It's the hope one. This is not a surprise. Especially since the blue lanterns are essentially like the support class for all the lantern rings, because theoretically they have the greatest power output, but only when around a green lantern. Because like hope alone doesn't have much power, but it increases willpower exponentially or something like that anyway. That's the excuse given anyway. And
I'm
so,
down.
Yeah, whenever they're around a Green Lantern, they make Green Lantern super powerful, and they themselves become the most powerful. And yeah, it's pretty good. But whenever they're not around a Green Lantern, they only have the most basic capabilities of lanterns. Like they can surround themselves with a barrier, and they have like some capacity to heal people, and that's about it. Yeah, Austin, you were talking about what lantern you thought you would be. I think that you were trying to think about orange for a while, but you kind of stopped thinking about that.
I mean, like, as far as I'm concerned, the way that the rings are described is very different than simply saying they each represent an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, we'd like to all think of ourselves as good guys, and that limits us to 2, maybe 3 of the core in general.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, I could complain about it on its own frame, but I'm not going to, because that's how it was written. Obviously, if Hal Jordan's going to be our protagonist, then that's kind of the point. So instead of being powered by or embodying the spirit of greed, Orange instead instills greed in its user, which wouldn't work. Avarice, I think, would be a far more accurate word anyway, and I think avarice could describe how I view the world in a very materialistic and, kind of blind, let's increase the productivity as best we can mindset, which is probably not healthy and certainly something that someone in Hal Jordan's position would want to stop, but that's why I'm the villain.
Oh, man. Austin's the villain, guys.
But that said, the way that the lanterns are described, Yes.
Bringing in that one Wonder Over Yonder song, I'm the bad guy.
Is that a song?
Yes.
I don't pay enough attention.
It is. It's
That's
a good
funny.
song. I'll send
That's-
you it later.
By all means. I'm the bad guy. Wait, no, that was Peter's line in Spider-Man Edge of Time. Don't bring that game into this mess.
I mean, I'm not, but okay.
Good, good. Just making sure is all.
Hmm.
Anyway, if if we're talking how the rings actually work, I'd probably get like latched onto by the Blue Lantern Corps as well pretty quickly. Just because the way I tend to look at the world is a weird, like almost cynical form of instilling hope, if that makes any sense at all. And I think probably tops orange as far as like in universe. But if we're just talking like elements of color equals certain emotion thing, then I'm totally orange. I will fully admit I'm villainous color in this case.
Oh man. But yeah, that is kind of a thing. Is that I talked about how the Indigo tribe, they lose all sense of self and all that, and they're made up of members that had no compassion previously, and they're basically brainwashed into being good guys. But the thing is that it is possible for people who do have compassion to use the Lantern Ring, and whenever that happens, it doesn't totally take over their mind. Instead, it basically acts like another regular power ring. And so, the thing about the Orange Ring is that, it is equally on, it's the equal but opposite ring on the spectrum. So, it's constantly injecting greed or avarice into the single character who uses it, Larfleeze. But he also wasn't an especially greedy person before getting the ring. So it stands to reason that, much like the Indigo Rings, if someone who did naturally embody avarice use the ring, then they could perhaps use it without being completely taken over by its properties. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but of course that would require actually getting an Orange Lantern Ring, which, Larfleeze isn't exactly handing those out anytime soon. Who would have guessed a guy overcome by greed isn't going to give up his thing? This is not surprising. But you know what, Austin? If you were able to grab an Orange Lantern Ring, I'm sure that you could use it to reasonable effect.
Aw. Why, thank you. I didn't know you cared.
Yes, I did. Sometimes I do care. Most of the time I do care.
No, that was perfect. That was...
So, yeah, that was exciting. And I think it's probably about time to end the episode as soon as I find my way back home. Because this has probably been 30 minutes. I mean, you can probably look at
it's been well over.
Oh man, okay, yeah. Well, gang, I'm gonna head back home as soon as I figure out where the hamster home is. Because that's the thing about Minecraft, is you kind of get lost sometimes. I mean, I guess I could also just say, hey guys, this is the end of the episode, and next episode we're gonna find our way out of here. Which, yeah, actually, let's do that. So guys, I'm mrgameandpie, and that's the end of this episode. And next episode, we're gonna find our way out of here.
We're gonna find our way out of here.
Yeah. So I'm mrgameandpie.
I've been Austin on Sugar.
And I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Woo!